Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, fix my camera there. Let's see who we got in the house tonight. Oh, yeah, we're starting to get everybody starting to stack in. I see. And we got Thomas. Hello there. Catherine, well, welcome to the show. Yeah. Don't forget about the stars. We're going to talk about that too, ladies and gentlemen. Crazy Witch. Hey, what's going on? Coming around the corner. We got Crazy Witch. Always in the lead. Liana. Hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tammy. What's going on? Got some brisket. All right. I'll take some of that. Going for a ride. Get that right. So we got a nice little lineup tonight for you, ladies and gentlemen. We got Mr. Russell. Yeah, Russell. Can't wait for him to bring on. So, yeah, I'm hungry too. I just got done eating some chicken wings and Mexican pizza, I guess you can call. Hope everybody's having a good weekend. So, yeah, I'm broadcasting from Northern Kentucky. Yeah. So I just wanted to say real quick, ladies and gentlemen, you know, when I post stuff, right, in groups, links and stuff for the show, you know, I don't charge. Hey, Brian, welcome to the show. Hey, I'm glad to have you. Bologna sandwich, potato chips. Hey, we used to serve that in jail. Yeah, I remember those days. But hey, I got to have my bologna fried, sir. But, you know, we put these links out for merch and stuff because I don't charge any of my co-hosts any fees for any shows. So stuff like that actually helps us produce more content, right? So keep that in mind. And we also have other friends like Chris Hensley, you know, that helps produce music for our videos and stuff. But we got subscription fees and advertising fees and other costs, and that helps to eliminate some of that out of pocket. I don't charge Barb, Mike Scott, Chris Hensley, and Val or anybody anything, man. And, you know, it costs money to do these shows, ladies and gentlemen, but keep that in mind. You know, so don't get mad when you see links or GoFundMe things out there. I am having problems with stars, so I did do a GoFundMe thing. But we also got Bigfoot coins, ladies and gentlemen. So I will post those links where you can get those. Yeah, they come in different sizes, or 2 1/4 inch, in different flavors. So I'm real excited about those different finishes. But I got Russell backstage, man. He's an awesome guest, and you're going to be fascinated with what he's got to say. Bologna. Yeah, I got to have mine fried. Green bologna in the gel and powdered eggs. Oh, Thomas, are you ratting on yourself? Yeah. No, thank you. Russell, are you still here? Well, I don't know where Russell went to. Here we come. I think Russell's there. We go. All right. Russell, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing pretty good. A little hard to hear you. You're breaking up a little bit.
Is that a lot better? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Your picture is frozen.
Uh-oh, is it me or is it you? Everybody in the audience, let me know. Is it me breaking up or is it my end or anything like that? I'm monitoring it on my end. Now, I guess it is kind of me, isn't it? So how's that? Is that a little better? Can you hear me?
I can hear you a little bit. You're still kind of garbled and your picture is frozen.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, give me some feedback out there. And hello, Lauren. Am I breaking up out there, Thomas? You're good. Okay, everybody says I'm good, Russell, so we're good to go. So it sounds good to me, Roger Blair says. All right, so introduce yourself, Russell. Tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Well, I'm a Bigfoot researcher. I'm working on a book presently, and so I'm always interested in studying, and basically like to look at history and how history affects Bigfoot, Sasquatch, any one of the names you want to call it.
Right.
And so, I do a lot of work with history and how that may have affected them. And that's kind of what I'm working on with my book that I'm presently working on. So that's kind of me. I worked with the North Carolina Forest Service. I worked with the Vermont Forest and Parks. Among other things, I worked in construction and did other things in my life too, but spent a great deal of time in the outdoors. I built my own log cabin with a chainsaw and hand tools, and in a wilderness setting, and I lived there for 4 years. No electricity or anything, and so I spent a lot of time
off the grid then. Yeah, so you actually did it.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah, and it was quite a lot of fun. It's certainly, you learn a lot, and of course I did a lot of reading up to that time before I did that, and so I had good success with it, and it wasn't a big cabin, but it was about 24 by 24, a big porch on the front, and I lived there for 4 years. So.
That's interesting. A lot of people are not able to do that, right? So, yes, everybody's asked me. Yes, I did trim my beard. Yes, but what is the name of your book, Russell? What's the name of it? You got a name of it yet?
This is the manuscript, but the name of it is Searching for Sasquatch with Historical Observations and Interpretations.
That's interesting. Good. Awesome.
And I'm talking a lot in the Gold Rush, the British Columbia Gold Rush, and the Yukon Gold Rush, and how each one of those affected the Sasquatch in those particular areas where that happened. Because there's a lot of things that went on when, all these people came flooding into these areas because they looked for gold. The support that came in to support all these people looking for gold, had to be carpenters and sawmills, and so they essentially deforested the whole area because they needed lumber to build these towns for these people to live in while they were prospecting and everything. So there's a lot more to it than just people. A large number of people, like 250,000 people, came into California during the gold rush. But along with that, it was all the other things that went on that would have really affected Sasquatch in the area. Not only the people, but like I said, all the trees that were taken down to make lumber, and all these things would have affected them. I don't know how they would have been affected with something like smallpox, which was an issue as well in British Columbia, in particular during the gold rush there. A lot of the Native Americans, it was estimated that 60% of them died from smallpox, from the many different tribes in British Columbia. So there again, we don't know how that affected Sasquatch as well, but it certainly may have. And all of these things coupled together would have certainly pushed these Sasquatch into more wilderness areas, or they would have, a lot of them would have passed away, or just died, and so the population would have been shrinking.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think on one of the other shows that you were in the comment sections, I think somebody asked, or Bigfoot or Sasquatch, could they catch smallpox? And the question or the answer was like, yes. They said yes, they could, and then it did affect them allegedly. So
if their bloodline is anything near ours, then there's a good chance that that was probably an issue. And so for so many Native Americans to pass away from the disease, there's a great chance that there was a lot of Sasquatch in the area that might have been destroyed as well. So.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that Barb and I really liked about your research, is that you're looking at it at a different perspective, right? You're looking at the history, the gold rush, the move out west, right? And I never looked at it that way. And that is something that I don't think nobody has, because think about all those thousands of people that moved and took that journey to the West Coast.
Yeah.
Now, you and I know they had to see something.
Right.
So they had to report. I mean, well, back then they didn't have newspapers but they had to talk about it.
Yeah,
so,
you would think so.
Yeah.
With so many people being flushed into the area, the chances, Sasquatch was probably in the process of moving out of the area because of that, but there should have been a lot of sightings and stuff, and there should be more stuff written down than there is, but there isn't as much stuff. You've got to do some searching to find it, but there were a lot of people that kept journals that came to the area during the gold rush, and that, of course, is a great place to find some information like that. But you also have to remember, a lot of those people that were part of the gold rush couldn't read or write. So,
now that is a very good point.
Right.
That is a very good point. Yes.
And the other thing I'm looking at as well is the Hudson Bay Company, and that came before all the gold rush. And there again, there were large quantities of Europeans that came in to trap and to trade with the Indians. There was a lot of, they were mapping the area. David Thompson is the most well-known of the Hudson Bay Company that may have had a sighting of seeing footprints of Sasquatch. And he was there doing a lot of mapping and looking for certain routes and to get to the ocean. And so there again, these people were all in the woods at that time. So they had to have an effect on the Sasquatch that was living in the area, for sure.
Yeah, and what other names do they go by, though? What did they call them, though? I mean, because back then they didn't know what they were, did they? Right.
They would have called them the wild man. That's pretty common during that time period. I have a newspaper clipping that's going to be in my book as well that goes back to 1730, and they describe it as a wild man, wild hairy man, giant man. Giant is often used. That's a term that's used sometimes too. All a name in their language that means some kind of hairy man. Wendigo. I mean, there's all kinds of different names that are used, but all these tribes were familiar with them, so they have a word in their language that describes them. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I wonder how the indigenous people dealt with them for all these, centuries. And that was one of my questions, because I joined one of the indigenous tribes groups that were like over 245,000 members. Mm-hmm. And once they accepted me, I made a post and I was like, hey, I want to learn more about Bigfoot or Sasquatch. Can somebody help me out? And they kicked me. They banned me from the group. And I was like, well, what the heck? Huh. And they're like, well, that was a no question. So I was like, wow. I mean, I didn't ask about skinwalkers or anything or Wendigos, but that is a very soft topic, it still seems like, with some people.
Yeah, I think some of the Native Americans, there again, I mean, some of the information is pretty forthcoming. And then other parts is not spoken about so much. It's actually, frowned upon to speak about it. And there again, it just depends on the tribes, and it depends on the people that interact with them. You know, they traded with Sasquatch, and so when I say that, people always say, "Well, that's crazy. What does Sasquatch have to trade with the Indians?" Well, one of the things that they had that was very popular with trading with the Indians is herbs, and they knew what medical herbs the Indians needed to cure a lot of things that they had going on. So they had access to this stuff. Now, maybe they are the ones that taught the Indians about it, or it could be vice versa. I don't know how that would have played out, but herbs was something that was very important for the Native Americans, and that's what they got when they traded with Sasquatch. Now, the trading with Sasquatch went downhill somewhat when the Hudson Bay Company got established. You're talking 1670s, because they had things like blankets and knives and cast iron pots and things that they couldn't get, that the Indians couldn't get from other places. So they traded more with them. And then as the gold rush came into those areas along the West Coast, the support team that came behind all the prospectors also traded with the Native Americans, and they had a lot of things that the Hudson Bay Company didn't supply. So there again, the trading went on amongst them, and then not so much with the Sasquatch. And if the Sasquatch had moved out of the area somewhat, he wouldn't have been there to trade with as well. So those are all things to look at when you're looking at, you know, what went on with the trading there. So, hi, Barb.
Right. And there is a lot of reports that we found out from the Cherokee and other indigenous tribes that yes, that they have trade with these Sasquatches or Bigfoot or giants. Not only that, but they do know about medicine, how to treat themselves, whether it's cuts, scrapes, how to heal wounds, how to medically heal themselves with plants and herbs in nature, which is interesting. We also, and this is where we're going to have you back on. So if I failed to mention, ladies and gentlemen, I told Russell before the show, Val is not feeling very well. That's why he's not here. So if I didn't mention that at the beginning of the show, I hope Val gets feeling a lot better. So I do apologize if that did slip, but I'm going to have Russell come back on because Russell and Val have a lot to converse with. But
I'm looking forward to talking to Val. I spoke with him on the phone for a little over an hour one day, and we had a great time. So I was really looking forward to talking to him. But I hope he gets well. Quickly.
So we're going to have you back. But there are reports that, like you said, Bigfoot are using pots and pans. And, you know, and the reason why we say that is that people are reporting that, and people laugh about that. But it's not a laughing matter, because you ask people, what do people gift Bigfoot? Well, you would be surprised what they gift in baskets, pots and pans, old pots and pans. You know, and they used to gather water. You know, I've seen a post about people making fun of somebody that they seen Bigfoot wearing clothes. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got reports of Bigfoot wearing clothes. Now, don't get me wrong, ladies and gentlemen. It's not like you're going to see a Bigfoot wearing a size 48, right, pair of Levi jeans that's going to fit them. The clothes don't fit. But, you know, in the Appalachian Mountains and some parts of the remote countrysides, clothes are being stolen off, you know, laundry lines.
Right. Yep.
And they are. And they're trying to mimic humans. So, and Russell, what is your aspect of that?
Well, there's a lot of sighting reports that talk about clothes being stolen off the line. Now, I don't have as many reports of them actually wearing clothes, but they do use furs, and they do use parts of old blankets and stuff they probably have gotten from the Indians, or wherever they picked it up. But they have been using that kind of stuff. And there again, it's more for the colder regions, I think, where
Right.
they actually do use that. When you look at the Albert Osterman account, he speaks about a sleeping area that was underneath a fallen over tree, that they had set up with moss and to make a off place to sleep. But they also had some kind of a blanket there. He described it as a cedar type blanket. I mean, the Native Americans in that part of the country did make a lot of cedar blankets. They would weave the bark together to make these blankets. So that certainly was a possibility. I also wonder about the rabbit skin robes, because those were heavily used by mountain men at the time.
Right.
And those were very warm. So the thing with them is that they attracted all kinds of forest litter, leaves and all kinds of stuff, that dirt and everything would get caught up in the fur. So it might look like something different to Osterman that he hadn't seen before. I don't know, but he does describe that they have something there like that. So
yeah, and where are they getting the furs? Are they getting it from the indigenous people, the Indian tribes, or are they getting it themselves?
They would probably trade for them and get them from the Indians. Yeah, I don't think that I don't believe they had access to knives or anything like that to do any kind of skinning of pelts and stuff like that, where the Native Americans did have. So I think that probably that's what they did. They either traded for them with the Indians, or they helped themselves to them, going in their encampment and picking that kind of stuff up. And there again, the stuff they take off the clothesline might be stuff that they give to the juveniles, and they may sleep on it or play with it or something. But I don't think that they wear it that much.
Now, that would make sense with the juveniles, yes. For bedding, yes.
Yeah.
Now, Russell Brian Barber says M.K. Davis has one in Bluff Creek with the frying pan. I don't know if it took it from a camp or already had it. See, now that would make sense.
Right.
So, yeah. Because we do know they come in campsites, right?
Right.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
So that is a possibility. So if somebody comes up to you that's not a Bigfoot, doesn't know anything about Bigfoot, and asks you, Russell, what is a Bigfoot? What would you tell them?
Boy, that's an important question. They're a creature that lives in the forest. They're a forest dweller. I believe that they have tied to humans at some point. And there again, the DNA study kind of bore that out to some extent. So it's really difficult to put your finger on, exactly what you're talking about, but they are a very intelligent creature for sure. And I think that feeding them and doing stuff like that is a bad idea. I don't think you want to get involved with that kind of stuff.
Right.
Because if you occasionally, if they have some apples or something, that's kind of a natural food, and that may be okay. But any of this other stuff, peanut butter and other kinds of things, is not a good idea for them. I think that they not only does it affect their teeth in a negative way, but if you stop bringing them food after you've been started on them, you're gonna see some unhappy creatures, and their behavior is going to be very negative. So there again, it's like I haven't ever seen one, and I don't have personal experience with dealing with them. I know that there's other people that's been on your show and and they've talked about how they can get really mean and very dissatisfied when their food stops coming if you've been feeding them right along. So
yeah, no, that is true. And from what we hear from a lot of people, and I tell people, and Val will use this, it's like the scale of justice, right?
right.
We hear more aggression when you quit feeding them than you do than people that don't gift them at all, because it basically, ladies and gentlemen, it's like that cat in your neighborhood. Once you start feeding it, it keeps coming around for more and more food, or that animal.
I would compare it more to like a grizzly bear. You're going to put
Thanks, I
food out
appreciate
in your
that.
backyard for a grizzly bear. He's going to come around pretty regular and get the food. And when it's not there, then he's going to go over to your house and look to see where's my food? How come you didn't put it out here? And so then children and animals and pets are all at danger. So, I would compare it more to a grizzly bear to get the point across that because, Sasquatch is a very large creature. They're easily, 600 to 800 pounds. They are very powerful. They have long arms, powerful shoulders, and they can create tremendous leverage. They can break the neck of a white-tailed deer or a mule deer or an elk very easily. So you're dealing with something that's very powerful. So you want to keep that in mind when you're dealing with these things. Now, they're not all like that, but they can be very aggressive. So, and there again, I'm not a big advocate of going out at night looking for them either. I mean, you put yourself at a real disadvantage. So, that's just me. But I would recommend that you don't go out at night looking for them. And that if you're going to feed them, the only thing I would feed them would be natural foods like apples, or things they would normally find in the woods. You could go gather mushrooms from somewhere and leave that for them. So that's stuff that they're normally used to eating. So it's not anything special that they get hooked on, like peanut butter and candy bars and any number of other things like that would be a poor choice. So.
Right. And I tell you, one of the things that I think too, I think the bears in national parks and campgrounds get a bad rap. I think Bigfoot are the ones that are stealing a lot of the foods, not the bears. I think they're the ones that are going around and they know when the campers are out skiing and out in their boats or not around their campsites, or when they're in their tents at sleeping at night and they're going down and raiding their coolers and stuff. Yeah, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's pretty likely as well. And I spoke to Ernie the other day and was talking to him on the phone, and we were discussing the idea that I think that it's very possible that the Sasquatch could go to some of these camping areas that have a lot of sightings. Salt Fork is one in particular that would come up. And I think that they go there with the juveniles to show them that these are the humans and these are the kind of things they do. We can whistle, and here's how they will react to whistling and mimicking. We can mimic their speech when they call for their dog or something, and we can do that, and that'll freak them out. And I think that they teach the juveniles about the humans by bringing them to these parks where these campers are. And I think it would certainly make sense, because the Sasquatch needs to teach the youngins about the humans, and that, some humans will have guns and they'll fire bullets at you and all this other stuff. So you need to stay out of sight, and here's what you need to do. And here's how you can, frighten them by throwing pine cones and sticks. And I think there's some, a certain possibility that could be something that actually goes on with the clan when they have a bunch of young ones. So,
No, I do. And Roger says, I heard a lot of people saying that Bigfoot getting stuff out of their gardens, fruit trees, taking chicken, cat to small dogs. Then that actually is true, Roger. That
That is
actually
true.
happens. That
Yep, they
actually does
raid
happen.
gardens. They raid gardens pretty regular, and there again, they're looking for tomatoes and cucumbers and all that kind of stuff is stuff that they would eat very readily. Um, you know, attacking your pet or something would be something that could happen as well. But I think that the raiding the gardens are the kind of thing that they would prefer to do because they can get without creating any kind of a trail leading back to them. In other words, you know, they wouldn't come in to your yard and steal a chicken every night because they wanted to eat a chicken. Because they know if they did that, that all of a sudden there'd be a lot of people coming out in the woods looking for what's stealing my chickens, and or if they're cows or calves or destroyed on a regular basis. So I think they're smart enough to know that they can take an occasional chicken or take you know, a calf or something, or a goat or something like that randomly, but not to make a steady habit of it, because if you do, they're going to come out looking for you and trying to hunt you down. So I think they're intelligent enough to know that.
Yeah, and I think you're right on that. And another question a lot of people ask, and let's get your 2 cents on this. And why do people why do they put their animals up in trees, like deer and other things, that elk and cattle?
Well, there again, I would suggest that my first thought would be that that's something, it's a marker. It's probably a territorial marker, and it's put there to discourage you from going any further. That would be my, I don't believe that they do it just to put food up there and come back and get it later. They may do that, but I think that the purpose of it being put up in a tree like that, the first purpose of it is to be a marker to keep you out of the area or to discourage you from going into the area, because it is kind of frightening to see stuff like that. And secondly, it may be because they're just storing the food up high enough so some other critter doesn't get into it. But that would be my thought on that. So I've never seen it before, but I've seen some pictures, and I've talked to people that had a sighting where they did describe that. I've seen also
Yeah,
where they had root crops that they pull out of the ground. And when they pull them out of the ground, you know, like Indian potatoes or camas tubers, the plant is something that they grab the top of the plant, yank it out of the ground, and all the tubers are on the bottom of the plant. And I've seen where they've laid those in the fork of a tree or something. So that could be just to let the tubers dry out. So there could be some reason for that, where they just put the food like that and then come back and get it later.
now we had an instance, I think this year, where one of our buddies from Southern Indiana was down around Mammoth Cave. Didn't I show you those pictures of all that grass and roots
Yes.
that
Yep,
were
you
in
did.
between the trees? Remember?
Yep.
And we were like, what in the world's going on? Because he said at first, ladies and gentlemen, he is an avid Bigfoot researcher, and he travels all around Southern Indiana and in Kentucky. And he said him and his son was walking, and he noticed like piles of, I don't know what type of grass it was, Russ. So I don't know if you could tell, but it was like grass that was pulled out, but it had the roots on it. And it was laid like if the tree was in a V, it was stacked in between there. And when he looked, it was everywhere. And he was like, he didn't know what it was. He started taking pictures and he sent them to me. I didn't know what it was.
Right. Yeah, I've heard of that happening before, and I think that the reason that they do that, it is a food of some kind, whether they're eating the roots or they're eating the grass or the whole plant. But I think they put it up there to dry out, so when they pull it out of the ground, it's damp, or or the grass has moisture in it and stuff, and they let it dry so that they can then eat it. I mean, I think when these tubers dry out, a lot of the dirt that's stuck to them falls off as it dries out. I think that, you know, a certain amount of that dirt is helpful for them, whether they realize it or not, because I think it helps to clean their teeth by having grit on those root crops that they eat. They eat a lot of cat nine tails too, and there again, the tuber on that, when you pull it up, it's going to have some mud on it or something, and you know, they may wash it off. I don't know how diligent they are about doing something like that, but my thought process is they probably just take it and put it in their mouth and eat it. And there again, shellfish, I mean, they break the shells against rocks along the shoreline so that they can get to the meat inside. And I think they end up eating parts of the shell as well. And there again, that creates an abrasive that I think, you know, may be very helpful in cleaning their teeth. It's not knowingly that they're doing this. It's just part of their feeding habit, how it may help them. So.
And then what was really weird is that, and I didn't get to send you this picture, and I meant to, and this just sparked this up in my mind, talking about the grass that I showed you. He sent me a picture, and he was like, "You're not going to believe what I just found." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "I can't believe I got #1 cell phone reception." He's like, "You're not going to believe what I found up in a tree." And I was like, "What, a deer?" He's like, "No." He's like, "Look at this. 19.5 feet up in a tree, he found a 55-gallon drum barrel." Now, explain that to me, Mr. Russell.
Yeah, there again, that's a warning sign. It's like, you don't want to come around here and mess with me. It's like, I can put a drum like that up in a tree. Then, I mean, it would serve no other purpose to them to do that other than to make a marker that's something that's, I mean, they understand that we have intelligence too, and that we can be easily frightened. And there again, when they come into a campsite, they know what they can do to frighten you. They don't have to be seen to do it, but doing something like that would certainly, that would be my first thought right away. It's like, this is an area you don't want to go into because that's a marker that's telling you go away. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, he was perplexed because I asked him, I was like, when he sent me that picture, I was like, I want to see pictures around in that area, you know. And what it was weird, it was that it was on a slope of a hill, but on the slope of the hill was where a human, it was even taller, higher. So, and he measured it from on the angle. Okay. So if you went higher, it was even farther away. If you catch my drift, the way the tree was and the angle, it was even further. He was standing underneath of the drum when he measured it with the tape measure.
Yeah, so and they could have stood on the uphill side and taken the barrel and actually thrown it up into the tree. It may have taken several times to get it stuck up there, but that they may have. It doesn't mean that they climbed up there and put it in the tree. It could be, but it could just be that they tossed it up there, and after several times they got it to stick in the tree. So, I mean,
yeah, but I'll tell you what, seeing that would freak me out, though. That's for sure.
For sure, and that would be the purpose of it. And of course, when they when Jerry Crew was working on the roadways there in California before the Patterson-Gimlin film, I mean, they found the footprints and they found a lot of equipment, drums and culverts and all kinds of stuff that was thrown off the trail down into the woods that they had to retrieve this stuff. So there again, they did that on purpose just to, you know, they weren't trying to stop the construction. They were trying to show them, it's like, look, this is what we're capable of. So you better think twice if you're going to keep hanging around here. So that's what I would think about it for sure. Yeah. And I think a lot of the stick structures you see are the similar thing. You see the big X's and all these, I think sometimes they do stuff with the stick structures to create barriers to like pinch point hunting when they're chasing a deer or an elk or something. I think some of that stuff is done to create that, kind of narrow down particular areas where the animal can't run through so quickly, so it can be caught easily. But also they do some of these X's and these tree breaks that you see that are up 8 foot up, and they grab a live tree and snap it off. It's like that kind of stuff is not for any purpose other than showing you that they have the strength to do this, and these are markers that I've been here, and this is what I'm capable of, so you need to go away. That's what I would say.
What do you think? Somebody made a comment a minute ago. I think it was Thomas. What do you think about the trees upside down? What does that represent? Do you think that represents the same thing?
Yeah, I think it would probably, that would be my thought. Those are really difficult to understand, because to have a tree like that and turn it upside down and drive it into the ground so that it won't fall over is pretty incredible to me. I find that one the most difficult one to link to a Sasquatch, because unless they dig a hole in the ground first and then put it in that, I mean, then I could see it. But to just jam it in the ground, unless the ground was awfully soft, boy, and those root balls on the top are so wide that trying to drive it in the ground so it doesn't fall over it just seems really hard to believe on my part, unless they dig a hole. And that brings back, talks about all kinds of other things. I don't see that they're that capable to dig. They don't have claws, they have nails. So if you went out there with your two hands and you were trying to dig a hole in the ground to put this stump in, you'd have a difficult time doing it. Now, granted, they are a lot stronger and have bigger hands and everything, all their muscles, everything's better. They're probably 15 times the amount of strength that the human has. So that would assist them in creating a hole, but they may dig the hole and bury the dead too. And if they do, then that certainly means they've got to be able to dig a hole that's pretty sizable. Mary Green spoke about that in her book, where they went to see the Sasquatch that she befriended that was on its dying deathbed, and noticed that they had a hole dug in the ground already that was big enough so that he could fit in it. So, I mean, obviously that it's very possible that was something they did. So in order to get those big stumps in the ground, I would think they would have to dig a hole by hand to put it in. To just say that they jam it into the ground, I can't do that. But
now, one of the questions I have is, and there's a lot of theories on it, but what do you take about the tree bends? What are your thoughts on those?
On what?
The tree bends, when the trees are bent, the arches.
Oh, the arches. Yeah, I don't know. That one's a difficult one. There again, it's probably something that they're just showing you that they're capable of doing. I don't know. That one's a lot harder to understand. The stick structures and the X's and stuff, I can come up with something for that to, sound pretty a logical answer for that. But the tree bends, I don't know. If it's just some kind of a marker, it's certainly not necessarily a something to stop animals from running through the area or to try to keep you out of the area or something like that. I don't see it like that. So I don't know about the tree bends. Those are more difficult to try to understand what they could be.
Now, I've actually Standing Stone sent me a picture. I think he was on vacation, or is, of a tree bend. And I live in the country. And ladies and gentlemen, I said this on other shows. I actually tried to replicate that for myself.
Hard to do.
And I'm actually broken trees doing it. And I don't know how they get a tree to stay that way without either snapping it or snapping it between your legs or snapping it in yourself in the face. So I don't know how they do it.
Yeah,
And I
don't
mean,
either.
they do.
It's like, I mean, they have long arms and they have, like I said, they have tremendous leverage in their arms. So they're able, of course, they have a lot more weight too, so they can actually pull it down. Usually when they do that, they put it underneath another tree limb, or they put it under something that keeps it in that bent position. You know, probably put a log on it or put it underneath the fork of another tree or something. I think that would be pretty typical for what they would do. I don't know about putting a rock on it or something like that. I've never seen that, but there again, I'm not sure why I can't come up with a reason that makes any sense to me why they would do that. It's a
I would
different
like to
reason, the
know.
stick structure, I think.
I would like to know. What do you think about the picture glyphs they leave and stuff? I wonder
I
why
didn't
they
hear
do
the
that.
end of that.
The
didn't
picture
hear you.
glyphs where they make stuff with
Oh,
sticks.
okay.
And what do you
There
think
again,
about that?
if you're researching in an area and they're trying to make contact with you, they might do these glyphs. I know of some researchers that have this stuff done so that they can find it on a regular basis. I would think that the Sasquatch would do that in such a way that the glyph that they created would mean something to the person that was intended to see it. When you have this stuff and then you don't have any idea what it means, that kind of bothers me a little bit, because I think that the Sasquatch felt that you would understand what the meaning was of the. Now it could be a meaning that I was here, could just be as simple as that, or could be a meaning of thank you for something you did for them or something like that. They often leave feathers in that case. Feathers are something that they prize very highly, and when they would give a feather to a person or leave it for you to find, that's a real positive sign. Based on reports that I've got, and of course that trickles down to the Native Americans as well. The feathers are very important to them. So there again, there's a crossover there between them and Sasquatch on the value of something like a feather. But typically, I would think if they're going to make some kind of a glyph, it has to have some kind of meaning that they hope that you would be able to understand, because it was obviously made for you. I'm aware of some researchers that have this done pretty regular to them, and in some cases they have an idea what it may mean, but typically. It's kind of unknown. People see it and they don't know what it means. So if they do any kind of mind speak with the Sasquatch, then that's a question they ask. What did this mean? And then they give them some information. It means something like it's a boundary marker for your property, or it could be any number of things. But that would be the only way that you could determine what it would be. It was like the Osterman case. When you listen to the Osterman case, he talks about the Bigfoot being able to talk amongst themselves with the chatter talk. But when Osterman tries to leave the area and the Sasquatch runs over and stops him from leaving, he doesn't use the chatter talk. He uses a single word. And he felt that that word would be something Osterman would understand. Where the chatter talk, he knew full well that Osterman wouldn't understand it, so he didn't use it. So I mean, there's a conscious thought process there, where they tried to use a word that was probably an Indian word or something. I haven't found it yet. I've been looking, but it was something that the Sasquatch felt Osterman would understand. And that's what I think these glyphs are. Typically, they do something that I think they feel you should understand what it means, because that's what the message is.
What was real interesting, Russell, and Barb, she's listening, and Barb, chime in and tell me if I'm right or wrong. Barb Hartman, if you're paying attention, because I know you're busy too. But Barb has had a picture of a house formed out of sticks with a chimney. Mike Scott is also on our show on Wednesday night. Barb, I don't know what state he lives in. I can't remember right offhand. He has had a house made out of sticks, a picture. And you put them side by side, they look identical. They look like a deck, a house with a chimney. Now explain that to me. And they live in different states.
Yeah. Well, it's a power of observation of the Sasquatch, obviously. He may recognize that humans in general live in a house, something like this, kind of square, kind of with an angled roof, and they all have a chimney. And the chimney there is what keeps them warm in the winter. I think that would be their power of observation as to what that was.
You got me on that one.
Talks about in her book that they actually, one of the juveniles would come out when she had her wood stove going, and obviously there's smoke coming out of the chimney. They can see that. I mean, they see campers, they see campfires and stuff, so they're used to the smoke. What the meaning of that is. But in Mary Green's book, she talks about it. The juvenile comes over and opens the door on the outside of the house at the bottom of the chimney. There's a clean out, and he would open that door, and then that would change the draft and cause the smoke to smoke inside the house. And then he'd run off in the bushes and wait, and sure enough, Mary would come out, and then she saw that door was open. So she closed it and went back in the house. And of course, the juvenile came back over there and opened it up again, did the same thing, and went back and watched. And then when Mary came out the second time, she put a cement block up against it to hold it closed. She didn't know why it was coming open, and then when she went in, he came and did the same thing again. He just moved the block and he opened the door, and then he went and hid again. By this time, Mary knew something was going on and that something was happening. So she attributed it to that after the third time, and they moved the block. That's what was happening. So based on your question, I would say that they were just using the house, describing a living facility for the human, and the chimney is obviously how they kept warm during the cold weather. So that would be a guesstimate on my part, and that's what it would be, a guesstimate for sure. Because trying to understand what these creatures actually know and how they think, and they're very intelligent, so they certainly can reason and do things, and they do things for a reason, whether it's to scare you off or to frustrate you with something you're doing, or they can be jokers too. And like this juvenile was, I mean, he was having fun watching her come out and go back in, come back out.
Okay, Barb Hartman said it was Barb Sheep had the cabin with the chimney, and hers was the house with 2 floors and a big deck, and both is in Washington State. So that's why I was asking Barb for correction to make sure. But she says, but Mike and Barb had the same fake campfires and trees made out of sticks and stones. Mike's in Missouri's and Barb's in Washington. See what I'm saying? So that's what I'm saying. So that's to me, that's incredible. That shows signs of, it's not like it's picking up the telephone and it's like, hey, I'm getting ready to do this, Russell. We're going to do the same thing over there, right?
That's right. Yep.
So
and Mary
Green, know.
Mary Green talks about that in her book too, where she put a popcorn in a paper bag and hung it out in a tree. And the Sasquatch came up with, see it, but he came up and poked with a stick the bottom of the paper bag, and then the popcorn fell out on the ground. And then she assumes they ate it, because when she came back, the popcorn was gone. The bag was still hanging in the tree, all torn to shreds at the bottom. And here's a stick laying there on the ground. So she told her friends in Oklahoma, Mary Green was in Tennessee, told her friends in Oklahoma that were researching, this is what I do with the popcorn. So lo and behold, they did the same thing. And sure enough, the Sasquatch came out and he used a stick and poked it and did the same thing. Now, how did he know to do that? You know, I mean, they both are hundreds of miles apart. How did that? Now, the thought process may have been, was that a bee's nest? And maybe they were poking at it because that's what they thought it was. That might have been a possibility. That's one of the things that I thought of. But you know, there may be some other reason behind it. But you know, they, like you say, they didn't get on the phone and talk about it back and forth between the two Sasquatches and said, this is what you need to do when they put the popcorn out. And you know, that didn't happen. So that information didn't get through. So there's some reason that they did that. And the bee's nest option was certainly a reasonable possibility.
So during your research, this is where I think Val's going to be a Valast, and I'm going to say Valast because of Val, right? Resource to you. During your research with your history, what are you finding out when it comes to the history from the past with Bigfoot or Sasquatch?
Well, you find out a lot of things because of a lot of those things. You're looking for similarities, and a lot of those things that happen in history are still happening today with sightings that are today. You know, especially good sightings. A sighting like Ernie's sighting, which is very important in my opinion, because it has so many attributes to it that are so interesting and compare to what was going on in past history. You look at Albert Osserman's account, he saw them talking to each other with the chatter talk. Ernie saw them talking to each other with the chatter talk. The Sierra Sounds, they know that they were talking back and forth amongst themselves with the chatter talk. So those are all linked together. That's a similar thing that's actually going on. But you know, most of the history stuff is stuff that they're still doing today. It's just a matter of, it wasn't documented as good back then in history. They still had sightings. The things that they talk about on the sightings is very similar. Some of the things they do, their strength, their stick structures, some of those type of things are still very similar. But I think that's what you find out the most, is you find out a lot of similarities that you can then transfer to what you're dealing with today. And you get to see how they reacted. I mean, how did they react to the gold rush? I mean, if they weren't killed by the smallpox, they left the area because the area was deforested and they had to leave. Right now, I'm doing some research for my book. The last part of it that I'm trying to work on, I'm talking about the Civil War. On the East Coast, the Civil War was a big deal. And yes, a lot of people, a lot of battles, there was a lot going on. A lot of trees were taken down. So there again, it affected them. If they were living in that area, the thing like the Civil War had an effect on them. So they would have had to move out of those areas into other areas. And same thing happened with the gold rush and so forth. So, you know, the Sasquatch has shown the ability to be able to adapt. That's a real big important concept. When you look at animals, the coyote is one of the most adaptable animals. They can live in a city setting, or they can live in the wilderness, or they can live somewhere in between. Sasquatch has been able to do that. Now, things like disease and stuff that the Europeans brought maybe weren't things that they were able to adapt to, and it may have cut down their population considerably during that time period. But for the most part, when the settlers from colonial times started moving out into the West, the Sasquatch was able to adapt to that. And they've been able to continue to adapt. They'll come out to dumpsters and get food and stuff because they know they can. And they're adapting. And so that process is still going on today. But it started back when the colonists started moving into the wilderness and causing the Bigfoot to have to move away. But he would come back, he would steal their chicken, or he would take their cow or goat or whatever, and occasionally, so they wouldn't go out hunting and trying to hunt him down. But there again, he adapted. And I think that's a real big thing that's overlooked quite a lot about the Sasquatch, is their ability to be able to adapt.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that, because they have to, especially since humans are encroaching on everything.
Right.
Now, I don't live too far. I live actually closer to the Appalachian Trail when I was in Lexington. But what do you think about the wild man compared to Bigfoot? Because they have the wild man. They call it something else, and it just escaped my mind. They call it the ones that see it. I can't think of the term they call it. They call the people out of the movie
Woolly
The Hills
Burger,
Have Eyes.
Woolly Burger, or there's all kinds of different names they use for these things. And then again, it comes back to, they're not stupid. They're very intelligent. So walking along the Appalachian Trail is a lot easier than walking through the brush. Walking along a railroad, walking along a power line, walking along a roadway, the Blue Ridge Parkway, all these access roads for logging and all this kind of stuff. This creates easy ways for them to move around. They're adapting because those things weren't there, 100 years ago when their grandfather Sasquatch was living in the area. He had to go through the brush. So now they don't have to do that. They can follow the roadway. So those are all adaptations that they've made over a period of time that makes their life easier. I mean, when you have these roadways for logging and whatever, quite often what happens is, after the roadway is constructed, then the berry bushes grow along the edges of the road. So they couldn't grow there because it was all forested, or if they did, they grew there in small amounts. But the birds deposited the seeds, and the soil was dug up, so it was as a roadway. So the bushes grow up on either side of the road, and it's berry bushes. So now you'll be able to walk down the road and pick the berries, and you got a food source. You don't have to wade through the brush and everything. I mean, you're talking about a big creature that's trying to walk through. Here in Virginia, we got greenbrier that is like incredible. If that stuff grabs you, it just about doesn't let go. The thorns are so
right. Yes, you're right.
And so the Sasquatch, if he's going to walk through that stuff, he's going to have the same effect as it does to you to some extent. Now, maybe not the same, but he's not going to like it much. So there again, that's another step where they've adapted to the changing environment that's going on around them, to when their grandfather Sasquatch lived in that same area. So,
yeah. Now, one of the questions that I always wanted to know, and always like to have people's opinions on this. What do you think about when people say they can cloak? What is your personal opinion on that?
On what? I didn't hear you.
When how they think they can cloak, they can just disappear.
There again, that's a tough question, because it's like, I don't know that they know that they can actually do that. I don't know. Maybe they can. I mean, we look at Patty. She didn't do it. Maybe there was a reason for it, but she didn't do it, and we don't know what the reason is. The William Rowe account, I mean, the Sasquatch walked up to within 20 feet of him, didn't cloak, didn't try to do anything like that. Ernie's sighting, same thing, walked up close to him. He saw the other one that came out later, and there was no cloaking going on there. So I don't know why you would do it in some instance and then other instance not do it. They don't like to be seen, that is for sure. They understand how to stay out of sight when they come into a campsite, and how to, you know, be stealth enough to be able to watch you walk through the woods, but they certainly want to stay out of sight. So I'm not sure that number one, that they all have this ability to cloak, number one. Number two, I mean, I think there are a number of different types of Bigfoot based on a number of sighting reports where they're actually different looking. They have some components that are the same, but other aspects of them are different. So I think there's more than one type. So that may be that some types can use some kind of a cloak or whatever. I tend to think it's more something that it's with our eyesight, that our eyesight is so poor on the vision scale that I think they may be able to just be in a position that sometimes you can't see for whatever reason. I don't know if it's their electromagnetic field. I mean, we have electromagnetic field around each one of us.
Right.
It sticks out away from your body about 12 inches or so, and that field is completely around you. Now, they may have that as well, and it may be considerably more. It may reach out away from their body 3 feet. I mean, they're a lot bigger. So, and if they did, then maybe that in the right circumstances allows them to be in a position where you can't see them, but they're still there. I would, make a guess that if you walked up and was able to reach out and touch him, even though you couldn't see him, he'd still be standing there, because it's just on account of that possibility of that electromagnetic field. I mean, there may be more to it than that, that I'm unaware of. I mean, I don't have all the answers, certainly, and there's always more questions than answers with these things. So,
oh yeah, absolutely.
But you can try to look for possibilities and things that compare to similarities from other reports and everything. So,
Brian wants to know, Mr. Russell.
Oh boy, that's another good question.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know. I would say one thing right now. I think that we're in a cycle where we're on the upslope. If you did a graph and we were talking about the population of Sasquatch in North America, I would think we're on an upslope right now. We're getting more sightings, especially on the East Coast. We're getting, which may indicate more sightings of young Sasquatch as well. So the breeding is going well, and the populations are probably increasing over what they were maybe as much as 30, 40 years ago. So if the smallpox that was prevalent in British Columbia and in California to some extent, and the East Coast as well, where the Europeans came in, if that was to affect and kill some of the Sasquatch, then that certainly may have really squashed their numbers considerably. And they've continued to build back up over a period of time. So I would tend to, and there again, it would just be a guess, but I would think that they can certainly live 100 years without any problem. So they may actually be older than that, but there are things that are going to affect them. I mean, obviously their teeth are a big issue. I mean, if you have trouble with their teeth, then they're not going to be able to eat properly, and their lifespan is going to be considerably shorter. Black bears are one of the few animals that have a lot of teeth decay based on foods that they eat, and Sasquatch eats some of the same stuff. So if their teeth break down, then that's certainly going to cut their lifespan considerably. Other things might be injuries, if they're shot at, or if they, you know, I don't know how they react to snake bite and those type of things too as well. May all be kind of negative for them. So that may, Mary Green described the one that she had befriended that was dying, appeared to have something wrong with its foot, and its foot was like bleeding, and she wondered if it was gout or something like that. She wasn't sure what it was, but it was certainly something going on. That could have been snake bite or something like that, caused a lot of swelling that you get with snake bite, and that would have caused the, you know, the skin to actually tear, because the swelling is so intense that it can actually tear the skin. So it could have been something like that. But there again, those are kind of injuries that could happen, and that would of course cut down on the longevity of the life of a Sasquatch.
So recommend for people that are trying to get into the field to go out and to investigate these creatures. What's your recommendations?
Well, if you watch Indiana Jones, he tells you the most important thing with research is to spend time in the library. And I would say the same thing. You need to read up every book you can get on the. You need to look at history, read up on the history, see how the history would affect, possibly could affect the Sasquatch. I would suggest that you do as much of that first, and then before you start going out in the field. I mean, you need to have field work as well. I can't do that as much anymore because of my Parkinson's. I can go out, you know, for a short distance, but I can't go too far like I used to. I've hiked Mount Washington, I've hiked Mount Marcy in New York State. I've been up these mountains and, you know, spent considerable time in the woods, but I can't do that anymore. So, but I would think, you know, after you do the research and you start gathering this information, that you get an idea of similarities, you get some ideas of what you're dealing with, what you should look for as far as stick structures and animals in trees and what these kind of things mean before you go out there and start stumbling around. And you definitely don't want to go out at night. I mean, their eyesight at night is very good, very good. And our eyesight at night is not so good. Now you can use, you know, special field glasses and stuff, but you still put yourself at a huge risk, huge disadvantage, because what you can special glasses and stuff is just a small area, and these things can move very quickly. They're able to move through the woods effortlessly. I mean, they've been compared to a moose running through the woods. If you've ever seen a bull moose run through the woods, you notice that he doesn't catch his antlers on trees.
Yeah,
he's able to
just
do
runs
that without getting hung up. So the Sasquatch can do the same thing. He can move quickly, and he can move through the, you know, some real thick material and not get stuck. So there again, disadvantage you don't want to take. So do your studying out in the field during the day. Then you'll be able to find footprints, you know, practice casting prints and stuff ahead of time before you get out in the woods. So when you do see a print, you've had some experience.
I take
casting
a tape gun for hair, just in case, extra sticky tape, so I can lay down in the tracks before somebody casts them, because you never know.
Some people have had good luck with that by putting tape around the tree so the sticky side is sticking out, and then they put something in the tree, sometimes a shiny object. One thing that they like is a CD. If you take a CD and you put it on a string and hang it from a branch, that kind of thing swings around in the air currents and light bounces off of it and stuff. It's very interesting to them. They find that kind of stuff really fascinating. And there again, these creatures have curiosity that is incredible curiosity. So not only are they learning by watching and stuff, I mean, they may stand in the woods and watch hikers come into the woods. And the hiker that's wearing the day pack, they may recognize as a through hiker. He's not going to spend the night. But the next guy comes through and he has a full pack with a sleeping bag on top and everything. He looks like he's as big as the Sasquatch is. They could recognize that as a camper. And that could be somebody that may have some food and will be able to check out his campsite tonight. I mean, those are kind of things that they would learn by observation. So their curiosity and their ability to observe this kind of stuff allows them to learn. So they're very intelligent, far more than most people think, for sure.
Yeah, and Angel Light makes a good point about turtles can live up to access 150 years. Some marine mammals, as well as marine mammals, have much extended life compared to land-based mammals. If we take into account that longest living land-based animals exclusively, elephants can live up to 70 years. Parrots can live over 75 years, and humans have the longest lifespans of any land-based animal. But the most, thanks to medicine, to put this in perspective, animals in the wild don't live particular, and it gets cut off. And I'm trying to activate, and of course I can't activate it. And we also found out that Bigfoot likes things that glow in the dark too, or shiny objects. But they do get mad. I found out when they quit blinking, they throw them in houses. So these are cat balls. We use them for ghost investigations. But there's one more question before I let you go. And I try not to name shows on the air for respect for the Bigfoot shows. But they want to know, what do you think about the Bigfoot shows on TV? What's your take?
They're primarily entertainment, number one. Number two, I would say that there's a lot of valuable information there when they talk to different people who have had sightings. Just like I would talk to a person that came to me that had a sighting, I would ask questions and take down all the information and stuff. And they do the same thing on those shows. They usually have people that they interview, sometimes Native Americans, sometimes just people that have been truckers or somebody that's seen these things and stuff. So that part of the program is if you're researching, because you may hear some things talked about that are things that you have seen in other sightings. So that part of the show is beneficial, I think. Other than that, I think it's entertaining, number one. I think you've got some good people on there. They've got good backgrounds, and they are very informative. They're interested in the topic, and so they're very credible people. All that's important to make the show as realistic as you can. But to expect that they're going to actually see a Sasquatch or something is probably pretty low. So I think it's worth. I'm not against watching it. At least some of them are better than others, obviously. But but it depends on which one you like. But yeah, I wouldn't throw it out with the trash. Put it that way.
Yeah. Now we try not to name shows, because of sponsors and stuff like that, ladies and gentlemen. Now, some of them are funny. Don't get me wrong. I do laugh. I do watch a couple of them. They are entertainment. But once again, ladies and gentlemen, that's Russell. Yes. And what's the name of your book that you're coming out with again?
Searching for Sasquatch, history and
I didn't mean to throw you underneath the bus there. I'm gonna make sure we get that because we can't wait for it to come out.
Yeah, but I hope that hopefully it'll be working, be to the printer in a couple months. Hopefully.
Oh, can't wait. And are definitely gonna have you back because Val.
I know.
You are got to have a one-on-one because Val and you got a lot of questions, right?
Really looking forward to talking to Val today.
Yeah, so Val.
Hope he feels better soon.
He poor guy, and he's not. when he says he's sick, he is sick. So everybody's saying thank you, Mr. Russell. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, to get your Bigfoot coins and collectibles and check out our merch store. That does actually help our show and stuff for more advertisements and shows and subscriptions. That's the only reason why we do it. But very entertaining, and I'm glad to have Mr. Russell on any of the shows, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely. So from coast to coast and around the world, that's a wrap, and we'll catch you on the next edition. Take care, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Russell.
Yeah,
Have a good night.
Thank you.
God
Thank you for
bless.
having me on
Take
your
care.
show.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.